There she is. I'm Phil Berman from Balanced Catamarans, and I'm here with Kirsten Neuschäfer at our factory in Cape Town. When I read about Kirsten's achievement of sailing around the world single-handed in a boat without a GPS and an autopilot, and rescuing a fellow sailor, and also being the first South African to win the Around the World Racer, I was just so impressed. And because we're a South African builder, and because we live in South Africa and we employ South Africans, I just thought it would be really cool for us to honor you in whatever way we could, you know.
Thank you.
And wow, you know, your story to me is like you have, you know, the saying they have, the boer maak 'n plan here, the farmer makes the plan. It's a South African story. And I mean, you really, riding your bike all the way from Europe to here and doing expeditions in Antarctica. And I don't think most people realize how hard it really is to be managing a boat and sailing around the world like that. I mean, I can't even imagine the shit that happened to you on that trip, right? Like this breaking, that breaking, the resourcefulness, you know. So in any event, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're just proud of you. So I'm curious, like, how did you get it in your head that you wanted to do this, and what did it? Yeah.
Well, I'd been sailing for a number of years, and I'd been doing the charters down to Antarctica, and then in 2018 this retro race, Golden Globe race, came up, and I just thought, wow, that's really cool. It's an old boat, it's a small boat, it's no GPS, it's back to navigating with a sextant and a paper chart and a compass, and it just seemed like the ultimate sailing challenge, and I like single-handed. So it was kind of my cup of tea.
No, yeah, I mean, you must be very self-reliant and self-contained, like you're okay being by yourself like that.
Yeah, I'm quite happy in my own company, and I like the challenge of having to figure out everything on your own, take your own decisions, make a plan if something's broken, how you're going to do it with only one pair of hands. So
yeah, oh, it's just, I'm going to digress, but back when I was younger, I had a 41-foot cat. It was like an offshore racing cat, but it was tillers. And this was when we had Loran, and everything was coastal navigation. And I had to move my boat from Newport, Rhode Island to the Chesapeake Bay, and I just had one mate that wanted to go with me, and the weather turned really bad off of Long Island, and waves were just flying over us, and it was really cold because it was late in the season. And I told my buddy, I said, listen, I gotta go down and get some sleep. And I was like, go down and get some sleep. And then he says, Phil, you know, after an hour, he says, I think we're getting too close to shore, you know? And I come up and I see like these white foaming waves, you know, and I'm like, holy shit. And we tried to tack the boat, but we couldn't get it around because the waves were too big.
Oh, wow.
And then I said, oh my God, we got a jibe. So I said, get the dagger boards up, and we went into a jibe, and we turned around, and then I looked, and I said, I thought we could just punch out through the surf, and I realized that it was like too big.
Wow.
So then I said, okay, we're going to sail onto the beach at full speed. Like, just, you know, how crazy. We're in this 41-foot lake cruising cat, and we're flying onto the beach. But my boat had these kick-up rudders, these weird kick-up rudders.
Okay, wow.
Went up to the beach at high tide. Tide went out, and there's my boat stranded on this beach, you know. But I was only sailing 250 miles, and I managed to run aground. You sailed around the world and run aground. I mean, it's just like... I was like a 200-mile delivery, and I managed to screw that up.
But the truth is, the coastal trips are usually the most taxing because there's far more happening when you're out in those coastal waters. I mean, the majority of the Golden Globe is so far offshore that you've got sea room in all directions.
Yeah, I suppose the risk of collision and hitting things above the water and under the water is pretty low,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when things do go wrong and you're really deep in the ocean, and then I'm sure you got into some very southern latitudes, right? Like, well, you went around the Cape, both Capes. Where was wasn't it off of South Africa that you helped rescue a fellow sailor?
Yeah, it was about 500 miles off onto the Indian side.
Okay, on the Indian Ocean side. And he was on a SATCOM or something? And
yeah, because we obviously, so that the race organizers could meteorize the race, we did have trackers, and you could also communicate with those trackers, and we had, for safety reasons, satellite phones as well. So his EPIRB went off.
Okay.
And then they managed to confirm with him that his boat had sunk, and that he was in his life raft.
His boat had sank, and he was in a life raft.
Yeah.
And then, and it's amazing you were as close together as you were in a way. You were, what, a little over 100 miles apart?
Yeah. So, yeah, it was...
And did you have to turn back and beat to get to him, or was it?
No, I was quite a bit further south than he was because I was looking for the winds down south. So I had to make a detour to the north. But it wasn't, I didn't have to beat. I actually had quite favourable winds to get to where he was.
Right, so you got to him pretty quick.
Yeah, within about 20, just over 20 hours or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I mean, but you don't have a GPS. So,
Well, we did actually have a sealed grab bag with a handheld GPS in it that had a special seal. If you broke it without reason, you would have been disqualified. But in this case, they said, get your GPS out.
Get your GPS out. A life's at stake.
Yeah.
Because picking somebody out in a life raft is just in the middle of the ocean. It's not an easy...
No, I mean, it was a first for me, but even though those life rafts are such luminous orange, you don't see them. And the sun was behind him when I was approaching him, so I could actually not see him. He could see me, and he was in comms with me via the handheld VHF.
Okay.
But I could not see him. He even fired off 2 flares, and I didn't see them in the daylight.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We had one of our balanced catamarans going in the Mona Passage between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic at 1 in the morning, and they heard an emergency call from the Coast Guard, and they said a boat was sinking somewhere in the area, and they called them, and they started scanning the horizon. I saw a faint little light, and they found like 3 guys hanging onto the top of a sunken boat, you know.
Wow.
This,
That's scary.
yeah, managed to get them, so
Sure.
that was...
Oh, wow. Huh.
So, and then when you picked him up, then he got onto a tanker somehow?
Yeah, so they'd simultaneously diverted a tanker, which arrived maybe an hour after I did.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then it was really a question of manoeuvring my boat as close as I safely could.
Yeah,
to
how
the
do you
tanker.
get somebody onto a tanker?
Yeah, well, initially the tanker captain said that he was going to stop the boat, his ship, as close as he could to my boat, and he'd form a lee to his port side, and then he said to me I could just come alongside where the rope ladder was. And I said to him, no, Captain, because then you'll have 2 shipwrecked people on your boat, on your ship. Yeah. So we made the plan that I would get as close as I safely could, and their crew would throw a line as far as they could. And they did manage to drop a line onto my boat's deck. And Tapio, the Finn, grabbed the line, jumped into his raft, tied it onto the raft, but everything had to go quite quickly. So I actually had a knife in my hands to cut his raft free, and then retreat as quickly as I could.
So he was a Finnish guy?
He was a Finnish guy.
Yeah, so you know what the equivalent word is in the Finnish for a boermarkeplan, a farmer making a plan? You know what that is?
Is it
sisu? It's like grit, right? So you have sisu. I'm sure you probably said, here's a woman with sisu.
Well, he had a lot of sisu because he was making jokes and all. I thought he was going to be all depressed when I found him, but he was, just laughing and joking.
Once he heard you were on the way, it's like, oh my God. I mean, I would be so scared to be sitting in a life raft in the middle of nowhere. Well, it's just like, wow, we're just so proud of you. And now you're you finished this race and you won all kinds of awards and everything. And now what? I mean, what does a woman like you do now that you've...
I'm not sure. It's more difficult to reinvent oneself after a project that, for me, it was a 4-year project of refitting the boat and doing everything that I had to get to the start line and racing. So it comes to a very abrupt end, and then it's a little bit of a task to reinvent oneself.
Yeah. So. And you're back in South Africa to be closer to your family right now, and
yeah, and just tie up a few loose ends. I left 4 years ago in South Africa, so it's good to be a little bit home before I embark on another 4-year mission.
Right. Well, you can probably get a little better night's sleep here than on the boat. Do you sleep well, like on your boat, when you're banging around?
I do actually. I find the white noise of the water under the hull and the wind in the rig, and especially if the boat's got a rhythm, it just puts me straight to sleep. I sleep better at sea than I do on land, actually.
So sailing for you is, I don't know if you're religious or not, but it seems like a spiritual activity.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's a place I enjoy being, I mean, on the race, I had frustrating moments where I didn't have wind and I wanted to get to the head of the fleet, but I also had to remind myself it's beautiful. beautiful place to be. The things you see, the wildlife you see, the sunsets and sunrises. I even managed to see the Southern Lights close to Tasmania, where those are just moments where you're like, wow, how many people get to see this kind of thing?
Right.
So,
Yeah. So was that? So I mean, you must have had so many like incredible moments. I mean, was there any like one thing that was just crazy, random, like how did this happen, or what like?
Not crazy random, but coming to the Cape Town photo gate where we had to approach land and just drift for 40 minutes while the race organisers did interviews with us. That was a hard gate for me because it's home and I could see, you know, port, and I'd been at sea for 2 months and there were people waving off their, you know, zodiacs at me. But it was a beautiful night. I'll never forget it. It was full moon. It was very calm. I had the spinnaker up and there were humpback whales all around me, you know, and they were surfacing right next to the boat. And I drifted all night after that. I had no wind and I was frustrated, but at the same time, it was like, what an amazing wildlife experience. I could literally have lain on the deck and put my hand down towards the water and I would almost have been able to touch them. So,
Wow.
yeah, so that was pretty
Totally
special.
cool. Well, I guess all of us at Balance Catamarans, we're just super proud of you. You know, I mean,
Well, thank
I'm
you.
not a South African, but my whole livelihood is tied to South Africa and all the employees here. And I go back, you know, as you know, to South Africa a long time. And I'm just super proud of you. So congrats.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.